Hey guys, Darren Carr here, Coach Watchlist Pods, and welcome back to another episode about AFL Fantasy Preseason. On today's episode, we will be talking about everything that happened over the last week and a bit with the Amy Community Series Games. For reference, I am recording this quite late. It is the 6th of March. Generally was pretty busy over the weekend, so I haven't been able to catch every single game, but I have since gone back and caught up on all the games, as I didn't want to put out this video without watching them for myself, as I didn't want to put out any misinformation at all. So now that we've done that, let's get into it, I guess. Enjoy. So we're here on the AFL Fantasy website, and for reference of what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to do something very similar to what I did in the match simulation video. Is I'm going to continue the team that we built there and just make a few adjustments as we go through the teams. If there was any poor performances, we can remove a few players and switch them out for people that we saw and that have been on our watch list in this time. So that's about all I wanted to touch on that. This is where we're at so far. Pretty solid team overall. I liked a lot of the comments you guys had. Really saying it was quite a solid team. A different structure with Elliot Yeo being so low. Typically his norm of an M4 sort of a D4 selection. And then there's always been like a Zach Williams or that sort of likes in the D5 spot. But just for the general options we have in there, I chose to slide him down to a D4 a D5, sorry, at this time. So without further ado, let's get into the games. But before I do, I'll touch on what we're looking for in terms of these preseason games. First thing is this is the best that we're going to see from a lot of these clubs. So as we know, round 0, there's only 8 clubs that are playing, so the 4 games. So that means there's 10 teams that we will not see any more footy before we have to make our selections. So we really need to take everything into account when it comes to these games, because this is the best we're going to see ultimately. This is the last chance we get to see of them before we make that choice to select them in our team. So we really got to consider everything. So you're talking time on ground, roll, the score, for the rucks you want to talk about. You want to look at their ruck split, kick-ins for defenders, and overall you want to look at their game style. So the club game style. Sorry, not their club style. And ultimately just gives you the best guess at what the team's going to do for their structure and how the players are going to play, whether that's a different role, time on ground, the scoring potential, stuff like that. So you really got to consider everything when looking at these games. So I really highly recommend you watch them for yourself. Don't rely on other people. Watch it for your own 2 eyes and make your own decisions, as we all look at these games a bit differently, and we see we're all looking at different players as such. Like when I watch it, I'm looking for particular players. I'm not watching the game as such. I'm looking for particular players. Where are they sitting? Where are they starting? So particularly, say, centre bounce, I'm looking, okay, who's in the centre bounce? Who's the 4 main guys, or 3 main guys plus the ruckman, and who's on the wings? Because that's all you can really see when it comes to that opening bounce. And then really making a note of that all the way through the game. And just keeping a note of that, like where they're starting. And then even when the camera sort of pans from there, looking at where those other players starting, like half forward, half back, etc., who's coming to the stoppages. So, yeah, I highly recommend watching it for yourself and just taking some your own notes, as we all get different perspectives of these games. Another note I had is that I like to just keep a mental note that it's only really preseason, so you'll find that it's generally pretty bruise-free footy. Generally there's a lot of marks and very little tackles, so those guys that generally rely on their tackles to get them good scores generally don't do as well, because they don't want to get injured because it's only preseason, so they're not tackling as hard or not putting as much pressure on. So that's something I like to just keep a note on, and it can be a bit of a flag when you see people that generally score quite well do quite poorly. So I do like to compare, okay, so say, I don't know the best example would be, let's talk about an LDU. I'll talk about him later in this video, but generally, he scores quite well. He gets quite a few tackles, because he's obviously a high stoppage player. On the weekend, didn't score quite well, didn't get many tackles, it wasn't really putting a lot of pressure on. It's preseason. They can generally be pretty lazy. So that's all I wanted to say about that. The other thing I wanted to say was that you really want to just make sure that the players that you're selecting are generally healthy and fit, moving freely, all that above. You don't want any players that are, not moving the best they could as such. So, and the final one was that you don't want to be overreactionary when it comes to selection. So you don't want to be changing your team willy-nilly and putting in some guy that you haven't considered all preseason, because you always got to be aware of like some preseason bolters where they just have this pop game where no one was even considering them and they've gone massive in the preseason. Then suddenly everyone has them in the team. They generally don't do great in the proper season. So you've got to be careful with that. So, but without further ado, that's all I want to touch on about what I'm generally looking at. Let's get into the games. Alrighty, so we'll start with Collingwood and Richmond. Sorry, let's get my notes up properly. Move that there. Let's go to Collingwood first. So, there we go. So, Collingwood's main midfield group, I thought I'd just touch on this a little bit just to really summarise. It was really Nick Dacos, De Goey and Mitchell. They were the main three that was in there, so it could be a bit of a bump up for Mitchell, in my opinion. Obviously, we saw him last season where he was sort of splitting it with Taylor Adams. He looks to have a bit more of a higher CBA count this year, so it could be one you could consider, but it hasn't been in my considerations and didn't even score that well on the weekend, so not really one I'm thinking about. Pretty much, the next one was Finn McRae. I've pretty much put a line through him. He didn't play until the second half of that game. He did score quite well in the 30%, I think he had. Scoring, I think he had 10 disposals and got close to 30 points, but I think he's just so likely to be the sub for them. So I've put a line through him. It's too much of a risk for me, so hopefully we can pick him up throughout the season when he can break into that team if there were an injury to happen. My next one I wanted to talk about was Patrick Lipinski. Is he actually an option? He's one that I have not considered all set preseason, and for that reason I will not be picking him. He's, like I said, he's one of those preseason bolters that I'd be aware of. Like you got to be cautious about them. We haven't really seen him at all in the preseason, and we haven't heard about any role change, so I wouldn't be going with him, and I think his price is too high anyways to be locking him in, even though he does have forward status. Moving on to Richmond. I'll just quickly change this over. The only ones that I only had a couple here that I want to talk about was Darcy, what's his name? Short. Jaden Short, not Darcy Short. Fucking wrong game. Jaden Short. The media knee-jerk reaction on that, was it Tuesday night, was a bit crazy for me. Like I said off the top, is you don't want to be too reactionary. Just because he had a good game doesn't mean that he's ultimately just straight into your side, You don't want to be picking the players like that. If no one's really considered him all preseason, yes, he probably is a little bit underpriced and probably has a bit of value, and that could make him a good pick, but you don't want to just be throwing people willy-nilly into your team. Another flag that I had for him, for the reason why he may have scored quite well, is that Vlostone was absent, and he is normally a big kick-in taker, so he will take some of those kick-ins from Jaden Short when he returns, which I believe he is available. Come start of the season, so just a big flag there. I am not considering it at this time, so take that as you will. Next one was Martin. Yeah, Dusty Martin. Didn't have the more midfield time as mentioned. Only had the 3 CBAs all night, so I don't really expect too much to improve on that. He's already at a 90 break even. We haven't really seen him break into the hundreds besides 1 year. He's getting older. It's a pass on for me. And last one was Gibcus. Didn't really show any scoring potential, so for that reason, I will be taking him out of this team currently. Let me just make sure I'm doing that correctly. All right, let's move on to the next game. So that is Carlton v Melbourne. These games feel like so long ago now. Carlton. We'll start Carlton. So don't really have too many points to talk about Carlton. I'll talk about the midfield rotation. So it was mainly Cripps, Chera, then Hewitt was in there sort of as a third one, and then Doc was sort of their fourth one with a bit of wing time here and there. So nothing too surprising there. Obviously, what happens when Walsh when he comes back, we know now that he is probably out for the first month or so with his back injury just playing up again. Big flag that seems to just keep swelling up. It's quite frustrating when we know what his potential is. Next one was Zach Williams. Obviously didn't play in the game but played in the VFL. It has been confirmed that he will return in the round 0 game, so it'll be a big watch on what he does in that game, and really got to draw a line about what he scores to make your team. I expect that more than likely he's going to get minimal minutes. He's probably going to get subbed off at some stage. He may only play 50 to 60% time on ground and maybe score a 50 at most sort of thing. So it could really make it difficult, and at this point in time I'm making plans to either get him in after round 2 or have that line that maybe he needs to score a 70 plus to join my team to start the season. Moving on to Melbourne, that's what I really had for Carlton, sorry. But didn't really see much from Billy Wilson, so he is not considered in my side. Let's move on to Melbourne. So, I have to talk about the big guy, straight off the top, Max Gawn. He could be the best fantasy ruckman in the game. Scored 130 points with only 74% time on ground, where he usually averages at 85 to 90, so he's got a lot of upside there, and he just looked so elite and so fit and healthy in that game. And he really took the foot off the pedal in the third quarter. So it really shows you what his limit is, and he's an awesome captain option. And he's definitely going to improve on that 92. So definitely saw a big bump in his ownership percentage after that game, and for good reason. Another thing I wanted to say was that Carlton were a neutral team for rucks as well, so it's not even like this was a great matchup for him. So the sky's the limit, really, if he were to come up against a really easy team, say a West Coast. What is his ceiling? You know, the highest sort of score he got last year was 162, right? So that's the ceiling that we have, and that's why he's a good pick, and that's why I think I'm going to select him in this side currently. I'll move Gundy for now. Alright, moving on. Next one was a bit of surprise, and someone that not many of us were really looking at, and that was Salem. Is he actually a starting option? At that 700k price range as a defender, does have that early buy, break even of 78. He's one of those players that have always been stuck behind a lot of players. So you're talking about Angus Brayshaw, obviously is now retired. You also had Harms, who now has moved to the Bulldogs, and Oliver as well. The tide sort of opened up for him, and he was just able to slot straight into that midfield. And we really saw a game that we hadn't saw from him as being that tackling guy. I think he had 9 tackles on the weekend, which was really positive to see. But do I see that continuing in the season? We've already got confirmation that Oliver is returning in round 0. This is how late I'm recording. I actually have the teams for that game, so I can say that Oliver is 100% back in, and Salem is in that he's on the halfback flank. So he's not an option for me at this point in time, just with that obviously the Oliver flag. But if given the opportunity, I definitely think he could push to 90, 95. Next one I want to talk about was Jack Billings. He did look pretty good on the weekend. He had that wing half forward role and scored a 81. Well, at a 60 break even, that could definitely be a good option and definitely could be a safer pick over, say, a 5 or even a James Jordan. Sorry, just had to fix that up. If you're keen on him, I'm not super keen on him, but if you are, I wouldn't argue against it. And last one was Caleb Windsor is just a lock on the bench for me, even at his price range, and is definitely probably fieldable. I think he scored 48 points on the weekend, 2 goals, but didn't really play a huge amount of tech game time. So I think he's just a lock on the bench, and he looks like he's got a good job security, and he has definitely been confirmed to be debuting in the first game of the season. So we'll get one more look at him. Obviously, he has the round 6 bye, but I like him very much, and get him when you see it side. Alright, moving on to the next one, we'll go to GWS versus Gold Coast, starting with GWS. Not too many people to talk about for GWS, really. It was just that Green did green things. He's elite as always. He's going to be an accumulator. Does he improve on his 111 average? I think he probably put a couple points on there, but nothing too crazy. Do I expect him to go 120? Definitely not. I expect very similar. So if you're keen to pick him, go for it. At this point in time, I'm not picking him just because of that early buy, and I've had that pretty hard rule that I don't want to have any Uber premiums to have the early buy. Next one was Toby. He looked extremely dangerous up forward and is definitely probably an option for your forward line if you were keen for him. Obviously 11 people are doing it. Especially with the early fixture of North and West Coast, he could definitely get himself off to a huge start and get some huge ceiling scores and kick a couple bags because he's just looking so fit and healthy at the moment. So if you're keen on that, I wouldn't argue against it. Get into it. And the last person I want to talk about was just Cadman, being a bit of a cash cow option. He's looking like he's moving up the ground a little bit more and getting a few more marks here and there. So he's working his way into games a bit better than he was last season, where he was more of just that deep forward and marking option. So he scored, I think, a high 40s game on the weekend. So it's definitely something you could consider if you were keen on him. Could throw him in the forward line bench, but I won't at this stage. That's all I really had for GWS. Let's move on to Gold Coast, where there's a few more relevant players. So firstly, Flanders was surprisingly quite poor, I'll say, put politely. It is obviously a massive concern with his 90 price range. Is going 50, I think it was 51 or 59, something like that. That's a huge flag for me. Yes, he had the role as he did at the end of last season, but they weren't really feeding him as the comments from Dimmer was that they were going to feed him, So, for that reason, I think he has dropped out of this side, particularly just because he didn't play well. If you take the average, he scored quite well in the last game and had the role, but in this game he had the role but didn't score well. So I'm just taking him out of the side, and we'll fill that later. If you're still keen on him, I definitely would consider it. If you think he can improve on that 90, I still think he can over the season. Just for this video, I'll not include him. Next one I want to talk about was Miller. Miller looked fit and healthy again, which is something that we haven't seen for probably the last year and a bit. He's really got the keys to that midfield again and should definitely improve on that 96 average. So if you're keen on him, even with that early buy, I would definitely recommend picking up in it, because I can see us all having him by season end when he's a top 8 midfielder and can definitely push up to that 110 average like we've seen in the past. And the last one was really just Sexy back. He's just a lock in that forward line. Has a forward status. At that price, you can't argue. But the only thing I will say is don't expect 115s every game. That's not his role. That's not realistic. You'll see that most of these preseason games, a lot of the halfbacks get major points just because it is, like I said off the top, there's a lot of marks and very little tackles and very little pressure, so there's a lot of chip around, so that's why he scored well. But I will say that the role looked really good. He took kick-ins, and he was sort of the first person that got kicked to when they were in the halfback. So really good signs, but just limit your expectation. Anything above 60 average will be a great pick, and I think he could definitely be the best pick of the preseason. If you're not on, get on him now. Even with that early bye, you have to do it. Alright, that's all I had for that game. I don't think there was anyone else that really was worth mentioning. Bulldog had a few kick-ins and could improve on that average, but I'm not super keen, to be honest. So that's that. Let's move on to the next game. So Sydney versus Brisbane. This is a bit more of a fantasy-friendly game. Let's start with Sydney. There's quite a few names we need to go through here. So just to touch base on what the Sydney midfield rotation was, is it was mainly Rowbottom, Heaney, and Adams before the Adams injury. Do I expect Heaney to continue this midfield role? Absolutely not. We somehow always see it during preseason that he just slots in the midfield, but then goes to the half forward as soon as the season starts. I don't know why they do it. It's stupid, but that's just the way it was at the start in this game. And then it was sort of like Gordon and Sheldrick was sort of the second in line that came in when others needed a rest or around the field, such. And then thirdly, there was Jordan and McInerney that came in. Yeah, that's right. So I don't expect it to be that deep of a midfield come the proper season, but I do expect some of those names to roll through there at times. So, especially when you're talking about Luke Parker and Callum Mills coming back in, whether Callum Mills actually plays through the midfield or not, we'll wait and see. But yeah, I definitely don't expect it to be that deep, and yeah, don't expect a huge amount of CBAs from those people. The first person I want to talk about just straight off the cuff was Taylor Adams. Obviously, he got injured in this game, and it has now been confirmed that he'll miss the first month or 3 to 4 weeks of the season with a knee injury, I believe it was. So definitely cross him off your list. You don't want to start with him. Well, hopefully we can pick him up later on in the season. Maybe give it 1 week. Say he comes back in round 4. Give it that round. See how he performs. He might have managed minutes, and then we can pick him up the following week. Next one is Errol Gulden. We already have him in a team. The thing I wanted to say on this one is, can we ignore the early bye for Errol Gulden? I've been pretty hot this preseason to say no, you cannot have any early buys in the preseason for your Uber premiums, subject unless they're value. But I think for Errol Gulden you can, to be honest. He just looks that good, and I think he could definitely be one of the best fantasy scorers that the AFL Fantasy world has seen for a long time. You're talking, who's probably the best one? Swanee is probably the best person to explain. He could be the next Swanee, or it could be a Tom Mitchell or such from a few years back. So that's just the realm I could see him going to this year. And if you're really hot on him, I could definitely recommend picking him if you were keen. So, and the other thing is that he actually presents a bit of value. Like, I know he's priced at the 112, but you look at his last 5 averages, 122, and that's definitely where I think he could push it to, get closer to that. Whether he does that through the whole season or he does, I know he'll do that in patches. But yeah, it hurts me to say, but I definitely could pick him. He just works so hard. He's a good tackler and spreads for those marks as well. And the team actually looks for him in those times. So it seems like Sydney want to move the ball around the wing. So that's why we saw high scores from James Jordan and Errol Gulden as such, because it just the marks are there for them and they spread quite well. So last thing on Errol Gulden, he was on track for 150, but he only played 77% game time. As I said off the top, they don't play their full game time in the preseason games. He normally plays about that 85 to 90% games, so that definitely wasn't his ceiling, and I do expect more from him come the actual season. Alright, that's enough about him. Next one was Grundy. So there's been a bit of controversy about Grundy. Obviously, Laddams was in the team and they split ruck time in there, so that was a huge flag and it turned a lot of people off. It's still quite highly owned. I think it was a lot of overreaction. We're going to get one more look at it. Do I expect the Laddams to play in the actual proper season? Absolutely not. I think Grundy will have that 80% time, ruck time, so I wouldn't be too worried there. And yeah, definitely wouldn't think too much into that game. All thing I really looked at in that match sim was that when he was in the ruck time, he looked good. He was getting some disposals. He's getting tackles. So all green flags for me there. So definitely one that I'd include in my side. But in this case, I haven't, just because, the knee-jerk reaction of everybody. So next one I wanted to talk about was James Jordan. Just a lock in your forward line, honestly. He scored 116, I think it was, on the weekend. Spread really well. Pushed up into the contest, into the stoppages. So he got a couple tackles. Just was everywhere and did so many good things. And the team was looking for him, like I said, with the ball movement. So I couldn't be more highly on Jordan, and he's probably one of the first I'd pick in my team if I was to create a new team. But like I said about Sexton, lower your expectation. He's not going to score that again every single week. I'd probably be more expecting a 70 to 80 average, which is still 20 points unders from his break even, so which is still a really good pick. So get on board. A couple more was just where is he? Sheldrick. So with the injuries that have happened at Sydney, with Luke Parker going down and Artaya Barabans, it does open the door for Sheldrick a little bit. Do I think he is a pick that we could take? Probably not for me. I know he has showed a stealing before with the 111 last season. He did have some good patches last season, especially during the buys for us, where I think he averaged like 80, but you can even see it there. His last 5 was 80, 82. His last 3 was 83. So he definitely could push that range, but you're only talking about a max 4-week sample for him. Is he going to make enough cash for you in the 4 weeks that you could then shift him on once those main guys are back in the game? I'm not 100% sure. If you're keen for it, absolutely, I'd recommend it. But for me, I am not doing it. So that's that. The only one that I also want to touch upon is Matt Roberts. As simple as if he is selected in the round 0 game, get on board. He looked good in the halfback role. I think he scored like a 65. Didn't do anything amazing. It's just I'm not 100% sure on his job security back there with a few other bigger names. So just a big watch on that one. We'll just quickly move on to Brisbane, which we don't have huge names to mention. I'll move that back to that one. Really, it's just Coleman. He looked great again. And if you were confident in picking him, I would definitely recommend it. He looked really good. He's the main distributor back there. The only flag I still have is that McKenna is back there, which hopefully we get a look at it, but I don't think that we will, because I think McKenna has a hamstring injury and is only maybe 1 or 2 weeks away. So that could be a big flag for me when selecting him. But he's definitely in consideration, especially with the likes of this D5 spot. Because there's not many options between that, 400 to 600k range. He could be someone that could fall into that spot if you want to not spend as much money on like a Jack Clark or such. So for that reason, I think he's done well enough to cement a spot in this team. So we'll shuffle this around later on. We'll just leave him there for now until we come across some of the guys that maybe didn't really earn their spot here. So the only other one I want to touch on was Lohman. He definitely looked quite good off that halfback role. It was obviously a role change. I think he scored like a 68 or somewhere around there, maybe even a 70. He looks good. Again, it would just be confirming if he is actually in that team. Again, McKenna missed, so does he then take that spot off him? So it's just a big watch, and if that is his role. So keep an eye on that one. Could definitely score quite well and definitely be a bench option for us if it is an option. But with how many bench options we have currently, it's probably not worth paying up for at this point in time. With the likes of Lazaro, Windsor, then you've even got Darcy Wilson who can go forward. You've got Simpson. And a few others as well that you can include. So there's definitely a few forward rookies to consider. I wish there was a few more backmen. But we'll move on to the next game. Alrighty, this video has already been half an hour, so let's try and get through the last few games really quickly. So the next one I wanted to move on to was Geelong versus Essendon. Starting off with Essendon. First guy I wanted to touch on was Tom Stewart. Now, he's been pretty quiet throughout the preseason and really hasn't shown a whole lot for the confidence that we've picked in him quite early on. He's really just been ticking over the legs, being 30 years old, and you expect a little bit more. Like, I think he scored a 60 and didn't really do a whole lot during the match as well. So I can see why some people have a bit of concern with him, as just hasn't shown enough for us. So for that reason, I have removed him from this team, even though I do think he is going to be better and does have everything lined up to improve this season. He just hasn't shown enough for this particular team, so I've removed him there. We'll fill that spot later. We'll talk about Jai Clark. So I think he's just a lock on the bench. He has an awesome role with quite a few CBAs. I think he was a higher CBA attendee at Geelong on the weekend, so that's awesome to see, and I think he has quite good scoring potentials. Maybe not super high, maybe for the 50s to 60s, and he does quite well there. I think he scored a 68 on the weekend, so shows he's got a good potential and definitely has the role, so I think he's just a lock on the bench at that price. Next one is Max Holmes, who really has... Where is he? Why can't I see him? Am I blind? I am blind. There he is. Who actually has had a role change over the preseason. He's moved that halfback role and really looked elite in this game in my eyes. He scored an 88 and really only played like 3/4 of the game. Really scored well in that first quarter. I think he had like a 40-point quarter and died off a little bit from there when he got moved around a little bit more. Had a few CBAs, but it really quite impressed me that he was pretty much everywhere off the halfback in the 65% game time that he had. It really creates a bit more of a dilemma for all us coaches that we were sort of narrowing it down between those mid-prices in the midfield with your Wines, your Crouches, your Martins and Amons, and now we've got Holmes who comes in at a even cheaper price, who has an awesome run, and if he definitely has locked that halfback role, he could really rack it up back there. So he's definitely one you've got to consider. And my only question to you guys is, how many of these mid prices do you think we can actually start? It's hard to say, in my opinion. Because we've got so many good guys in the midfield already with, your Zach Butters, who you'd expect to improve it based off of his start of the season last year, and Jack Steele, who should go back to his close to the 110 range. LDU, we'll get into him a little bit more later on, but yeah, he obviously has the scoring pedigree to go quite well as well, so it's just so difficult how cheap you want to go. Do you just go full mid prices? That's definitely an option, but is that going to work long term? To have some sort of balance in this team, I haven't included Holmes in this team just because, I needed some balance, and I think there's better to go for the underpriced underpriced premiums rather than going all mid prices, because I don't think that's going to help anybody, and it's a bit more of a risky play. Like I say, mid price players are high risk, high reward. They can either go really well for you and make you a bunch of cash and score quite well for you, or they can pretty much stay where they're at, or if you actually do worse than they are priced at, and really hurt your season. So for that reason, I've won't take him. Last thing I want to talk about here was just Sean Manor. Only played in that second half. He played 27% game time and scored the 35 fantasy points. Even kicked a goal on that. So definitely doesn't look like he's going to be playing in the best 22. But just keep this guy on your favourite list and keep an eye on him, because I'm sure he'll come in at some stage throughout the year and be a good cash cow for us. I'm pretty confident about that. Moving on to Essendon, that's all I really had to say about any of those guys. Conway didn't play, unfortunately. There's still a chance that he does come in and play some ruck time. I still think the Stanley's going to be there, unfortunately. So I don't know how confident you'd be to start him, even if he is 50% split ruck. But because he did play Draper in the VFL, so it sort of worked out either way. He either played Goldstein or Draper so just keep an eye on that one. Keep an eye out for Team Watch. If you're confident that he can still have some scoring potential as a 50-50 ruck, then I wouldn't shy away from that pick for sure as your R3. Moving on to Essendon. So where do I want to start? Martin. Just got to touch on Martin real quick. He just cemented his side. We already had him in our side from the match sim where he looked elite, and he just went to a new level in this match where he scored 2 goals. He was absolutely everywhere. Don't really need to say too much about him. Just get him in your side and you'd be a brave man to go against him, because he could go absolutely bonkers this year. Next one was Elijah Sada. So I've been pretty hot on this guy all preseason. I think I even said in an early podcast before Christmas that this guy was on my watch list, and with what he can do, we know he's got a lot of potential with his rookie numbers. It's just a matter of what his role is going to be, and whether he gets that opportunity. And from what I could see, he was playing majority on the wing. I think he played quite a high time on ground. He really worked hard off the wing to approach stoppages and really spread quite well and get back in defence to help in there. So he was getting a lot of those chip kicks and spread balls. So he was getting a few marks. So he definitely should improve that 53 average. I would expect somewhere around the 70s. I don't know. That's just where I see wingmen most of the time, where they can get to that 70 comfortably, and they can probably even have a jump up from there. But I expect this guy to be a bit better, and as you can see, people are jumping on with 8%. They'll probably creep over to 10% by the season starts, I would say. So if you're hot on him, it's just the only dilemma with these sort of guys, Sidus, the price range. There's so many guys. You're talking like Pfeiffer's there, James Jordan's there. You've even got a Cam McKenzie who's also put his hand up in that range as well. So can you have all of them? Probably not. That's probably too midfield heavy, and that's a lot of risk you're taking on. We'll touch on these other guys a bit later, but he's definitely one that you could consider if you are keen on him. Next one would be just overall Essendon. We're willing to chip the ball around and really have a slow approach to their attacking style of footy. So it's really great for fantasy points, and we saw that in the scores where there was a lot of marks, and all the defenders had quite high numbers. Like McGrath had over 100 as well, same with Nick Martin, and the wingmen had quite a lot as well. I think Sidus had 81, and I can't remember who else on the other wing, but they all had quite high scores, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. If Essendon are going to keep doing this game style, then that could be really beneficial to a lot of the Essendon boys. One more I didn't have on my list here, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Darcy Parish. He looked elite in that game. He was working so hard, really tackled well and spread, and had a lot of touches as he normally does. So if you're a brave man and you want to have a bit of pod, I would not be shying away from Darcy Parish, as he always seems to go underrated. Alright, next game is Port Adelaide v Fremantle. There's a few guys to touch on in this game. It was a very fantasy relevant game, so we'll talk about Port Adelaide first. Now, first of all, got to quickly bypass Zach Butters. Obviously, he got injured quite early on in the game. I'm not too concerned with the injury. It was obviously just very precautionary. He just rolled it, and Hinkley just went, nah, we're not risking it. Don't go back out there. He only scored the 11 points, which doesn't look great. But they do have, I think it was like a 16-day break between that game and round 1 when they play against West Coast, which, again, could be a bit of a flag to say that they put that one in the book as a win and don't have to have your superstar playing full minutes. So it definitely is a flag, and I can see why people are jumping off. And yeah, just for that sake, I will probably take him out of this team purely for that reason. Next guy was just Rosie. Rosie was everywhere without Butters. He spread well. He was really smooth with the ball in hand. I think he kicked the goal in there as well. And yeah, but the thing is, the reason why I'm not confident with picking Rosie is obviously he's quite a high price tag at 106. And it's just that role. I'm not sure where he sits in the midfield role. Like, obviously, he had quite a few CBAs without Butters, but he still was not to the same heights as, your Wines, and I think even Drew had more CBAs than him. Because my gut feels tells me that Rosie and Horne-Francis are going to split time between forward and mid. So one's resting forward, one's in the mid, and vice versa. So that's just how I see it, because I think Rosie is the better forward out of Zach Butters and him. And obviously Wines, he doesn't know how to play any other role. We saw that last year when he got pushed out into the wing. So that's just how I see it, and that's the reason why I won't pick him, even though he did go very well on the weekend and scored like 111 or something like that. So that's enough about him. Wines, I'm slowly getting more comfortable with the idea of picking this guy. Obviously, he's gone past his Brownlow prime, but I definitely think he could capture some of those points back. He was definitely pretty solid, being that main midfield guy again. Didn't play the full game there, like I probably would have liked to see, because he came in the third, halfway through the third, he sort of pushed to half forward and a bit of a wing. I think it was just Hinkley managing their time a little bit, getting their bodies right. And I looked back through his numbers and saw that his second quarter was quite bad. He only scored the 7 points, but then I looked through the time on ground and he only played 50%, which sort of explained it. And only had the 6 CBAs, so I hope that's not what Hinkley plans to do throughout the season, but we'll have to wait and see. But I could definitely support the pick for Ollie Wines, and I will slide him into this side for now. Let's just slide everyone up real quick. Alright, next one. Now, this one's not really popular on anyone's list, but I think he probably should be. He's not even here. That's how low he is. Chase Burgoyne. Now, the news out of Port, being an Adelaide boy, has been that he has got this wing role and it's all his, and he has such endurance beast. He's got to be an endurance beast, and he just plays all the game, and he's definitely going to improve on this 51 in my opinion. So could be a different option for Zach Williams if he doesn't get up for round 0. If he doesn't score well. If you're looking for another option around that 450k range, I would expect him again to score probably 60s to 70s. So he definitely would increase that price, but maybe not be a smash pick. Again, Port have a good run coming into the first half of the year, so he'd be quite nice. He only played the 63% time on ground, where he's usually a 80 guy. Can't remember exactly what he scored, but it was enough for me to proc my ears up and really look at his numbers. So it was decent enough to have a look at. And last thing I wanted to touch on regarding Port was just that we're no closer to figuring out what this ruck role is going to be like, whether they're just going to run the 2 or run the run. More than likely they're going to run both of them, and they're going to have 50-50 like it's been all preseason. So for that reason, I don't think you can go near either of them, unfortunately. But I'd be pretty confident to say by the end of the season, Jordan Sweet will be the number 1 ruck at Port, and we'll go on a tear at some point, and we'll need to jump on. So keep an ear out for that one. Moving on to Fremantle. Hopefully I can quickly get through some of these because some of these are just pretty easy. So Hayden Young, absolute lock. Don't even need to talk about it anymore. He was absolute a gun to that game. Kicked 2 goals and 3 behinds, which was a lot more than what I would have expected. Don't need to talk about him anymore. Sharp wasn't great, but he still scored a 51 in the end, which really shows that even when he's having a poor game and didn't really get involved too much, I think he only had 10 disposals, he can still score something that would be considered value, right? That's still 20 points above his price tag, so I just think he's a lock on the bench no matter what you think. And considering Port are actually a tough matchup as well, and don't allow those cheap easy marks, I think this is a floor score for him, and expect a little bit higher. Like I said, probably around 60 to 70. Next one was just Nat 5. Now, I thought he was great. He's obviously got the 26 disposals, and I just thought he really didn't get out of second gear. He just sort of trotting along, getting to each stoppage and just getting those handballs out. He probably got a little bit unlucky with his tackle attempts. He probably had 5 or 6 tackle attempts, but only 2 of them got registered just through, I don't know, a free kick against. A teammate has come in directly after him and got the free kick instead of him, and stuff like that. So I at least saw 3 that could have counted towards score. So I do expect his marks and tackles to really improve when the season starts. I don't expect him to just be a stoppage guy, and that's always his game. He will get some outside ball. So I think for that reason he is locked into my side, even though he is obviously an injury risk. But he's looking fit and healthy and looks good, so I'm locking him in. And last one was just that. Oh, sorry, 2 more. We'll go to John Clark. For me, I heard some media out there saying that he looked good, but from my eyes, I actually didn't think he was great. He got on the end of a few lucky kicks that sort of just ended up in his hands, even though it was going to sort of like a Luke Ryan or another teammate. So that bolstered his stats a little bit. It just the team didn't look for him like I would expect if he was going to be that main distributor off halfback, and I'd really need to have a lot of confidence with that if I expect him to improve on his 77 average. He really needs to push closer to 90, if not 95, sort of thing. So for that reason, I am not on Jordan Clark, and I'm going to remove him from this team. And just a couple more at Freo. Obviously, Brayshaw, definitely not on Brayshaw at all. He's got pushed out into the wing, like I said in other videos. He's definitely a better outside player than the likes of a Sarong, a Fife, and a Hayden Young. So I was definitely anticipating him being on the wing. And while I still think he could go at 110 on that wing, it's more than likely he's going to drop down, and he's probably not going to improve that. We have seen wingmen absolutely dominate, like Errol. He can absolutely rip it up, and I think he could be on the same pedigree as that, but we need to see some evidence of that before we jump straight into it, especially at that price range. So, not for me. Strong does strong things. He should be good this year, but probably not enough upside for me to start, and don't have a good enough run. And the only one I really wanted to touch on was Jackson. Obviously, his ownership has jumped up quite significantly with the news that Sean Darcy is out with an injury. Now, we don't know the extent of the injury just yet. All we know is it's a near clean out, and that could be, depending on the type, could either be 3 to 4 weeks, or it could be sort of 6 to 12 weeks. We don't really know. Until we know more, I won't select him in this side. But if Sean Darcy is out for anything more than, I'd say, 6 weeks plus, then absolutely lock Luke Jackson in your side, because he went at 99.5, I think, without Sean Darcy over the 8 games last year. So that is definitely value, and he could be a solutions to all our problems come round 5 and 6 when, you know, Gawn and Grundy have their bye. So massive watch on that, and keep an eye on it. Alright, that's enough for those two. God damn, need to get through these games faster. Alright, Adelaide v West Coast. Absolute dominant of a game. Let's just quickly say that Adelaide's midfield split was quite spread. There was quite a few guys in there. So Sam Berry threw his hand up for round 1 selection, which probably isn't great. Especially for the main 3 guys in Laird, Dawson and Crouch. How does that affect their mid time? So definitely keep an eye on that. Come round 1 when team selections are made. I think he did enough to get named, so I would be quite surprised if he's not there. But whether that's going to hurt them enough, I'm not too sure. The other thing was Crouch's time on ground is still a major concern. I think he only played like 58% on the weekend, which, it isn't a huge flag in itself, but I've never been high on him this season just because he's never been a huge time on ground guy. He's always sort of maxed out at that 75%, whereas, the new age sort of beast midfielders are pushing, 85 to 90% now. So it really limits his ceiling for me, but no doubt he's a points per minute beast and he can really rack it up when he wants to. So I definitely still see him getting closer to 95 to 100 on that price range. So it could definitely be one you select if you're confident, but I'm not super hot on it at this point in time. Another one was Rankin. He's popped up in a few teams now just with that role. He looked elite on the weekend. I think he scored 109 AFL Fantasy points in 3 quarters before being pretty much taken off because he just, I don't know, Matthew Nicks just didn't want to play him for the 4th quarter. So kicked the 4 goals with a sprinkle of CBAs in that time. So I think that's going to continue. I think they definitely prefer him over Shelley, so that's going to continue. Personally, I can't do it. Not at that price range of 74, not for a small forward. Even with a ceiling of a 109 and 3 quarters, it's definitely something to consider. You don't play West Coast every week, is the other thing. He's going to come up against harder opponents, especially early on in the season. I think I said that there was 3 or 4 hard teams in the first 5 or 6 weeks, so that's just the way I see it. So not super keen on him. Next one is Daniel Curtin. Didn't play, so I've put a line through him in terms of a rookie bench option. Didn't think he was going to score great either way, but yeah, keep an eye on him if he gets selected for round 1. Don't probably get sucked in too much if he does, because he could definitely be an in and out guy if he doesn't perform, if he's going to be that fringe player. Alright, that's all I had for Adelaide. I might just touch on Burgess really quickly because his price is nearly 9%. Didn't play, I don't believe, and won't score much either way. So I definitely think he's just depth, and I wouldn't be picking him. I don't even know why he's favoured. And Dawson did Dawson things. I think he scored about 88 and really had quite some low time on ground. So probably not as dire as I initially thought with him playing a bit more forward. He was a sort of bit more midfield today. Oh, not today, sorry, in the game. So probably not too much to worry about there, but I'm still not confident on picking him as a starting pick. We'll move on to West Coast, where there's only probably a couple guys that we're interested in. Mainly Elliot Yeo was solid without starring. He had the 9 tackles. And I think he's done enough to secure a spot in your team. So if you don't have him, I'd consider dropping him. If you can't trust him, then see if there's other alternatives. Like I said, you got Coleman there, who's very similarly priced, much younger, but does have the buy. So just something to consider. And last time was just Harley Reid, that's the name. Was much better. I think he scored like close to a 70. And it's just a lock on your forward line at that price. Just don't even think about it too much. If even if he only scores like 50s, that's say still close to 20 points unders, and he's going to be a good cash cow for us. So definitely one you need to jump on. Already 65% of people are doing it, so should be higher, but I don't think they will. That's all I had for those guys. Nothing too crazy with these guys. Bennett, quickly. He's just a looping option. It's sort of out of him or Livingstone. Both have that ruck forward status, which is nice. So will be handy when come the season when you want a VC loop. It's just really trying to gauge which one's going to be more of that third ruckman, I guess. Obviously, you got Flynn, then you got Williams, and then one of these guys could be sort of that fullback ruck. So hopefully we can find one that's worse than the other, and we can have that locked in for the season. And the reason why we've gone with West Coast ruckman for this season rather than a Max Heath, because if you look at where West Coast are playing, they're playing mostly Sunday games, so it gives you that latest opportunity to use your VC loop. Whereas Max Heath this year, St Kilda moved up a little bit. They've been probably pushed closer to majority Saturday games. So just something to think about there. Let's move on to the Hawthorn v Western Bulldogs. We'll go with the Hawks first of all. Alrighty, let's go through this. So the Hawks midfield rotation was quite heavily that Newcomb was in there, Nash and Warple, and then sort of Huswick came in as a sort of a fourth option when one of them needed a rest. So pretty tight midfield still. Probably, as we've heard from the coach, that it should sort of expand a little bit more. They don't want to just run the same guys in there constantly, so expect a few more numbers from a few guys, like a Cam McKenzie, maybe Dylan Moore when he's back. Obviously, Will Day will come back. And there's a few other guys that run through there as well, so something to consider. Firstly, with these guys, so let's start from the top. James Sicily, he was playing a more accountable role, even with I think it's Ethan Phillips. No, it's not Phillips. I can't remember his name now. There he is. Yeah, it is Ethan Phillips. Sorry. Even with Ethan Phillips, he still played an accountable role and didn't get a lot of those chip kicks and intercept possessions that we are used to seeing from him, which create his ceiling scores. Like I said previously, I don't rate the pick, and I think he's on a massive slider this year, and hopefully we can pick him up next year being cheap when Hawks defenders are a bit more reliable and not injured. John Newcomb is the next one I wanted to talk about. He was absolutely everywhere in this game. Had the 37 disposals, 9 marks, 3 tackles, which is sort of a bit surprising for Newcomb, considering he has been known as a tackling beast. I think his debates game, he had like 16 tackles or something like that. So he definitely has got that game in him and can tackle quite hard. But like I said, it's a preseason game, so maybe he's just taking it a bit easy and not trying to hurt himself. But the thing that really impressed me was the marks. The teammates were literally looking for him in the transition from the D50 to forward 50, and he's got a lethal, I think it's a right boot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Could be one of them. So he can really be a penetrating kick. So the teammates were looking for him to really get it deep and giving our forwards the best opportunity. So I do like him as a pick, and I think he could definitely have a breakout season and really push closer to 105 if that's something that continues. Alright, next one was Carl Amon. Not a huge amount that we didn't really already know, but it was the first look that we got to see for him, and he was definitely off that half-back role, which was nice to see. Took quite a few of the kick-ins, which was nice. Obviously, elite kick to handball ratio. I think he had like 24 kicks and 4 handballs, so definitely doesn't like to use his hands at all. But there just wasn't enough chip kick, which we would have expected from Hawthorn, who's on the bottom of the ladder. Definitely could happen towards, throughout the season, but they're looking to move the footy fast, and not really chip it around as such. But I think that will come unstuck quite a few times throughout the season with the young kids, and he definitely could be in better. So I'm still quite bullish on Carlton if you're keen. But definitely I think Nick Martin is ahead of him in terms of picking. Just with he's a bit cheaper and his role is probably a bit more secure. Yeah, the team is just he's a bit better of a spreader player. So this is my thoughts. Cam McKenzie, mainly played off the wing with a sprinkle of CBAs, similar to Ward. He played on the opposite wing, so nothing too crazy about either of them. I do think he will improve on this 49 average and probably push closer to 60 to 70. Maybe I'll put my ass on the line and say maybe he'll push closer to what's it called? Let's go 64 to 67. Sorry, so I think he'll go closer to those ranges, and definitely could be a good pick for the forward line for us. So definitely something to consider. And for that reason, I will include him in this team just because I'm quite happy with that. We'll just shuffle this around a little bit. Very cheap in the forward line. Very cheap. The other one I also wanted to include in this team was... who do I take out? We'll come back to it. Sorry. Next one I want to talk about was Dan Ambrosio. Was a little quieter with aim on back. He was still off half back and wing, so definitely still expect that role to continue, and he probably will improve on that 52 and maybe push closer to the 60s, but it's probably not enough value for me to start at this point in time. Definitely seems like he's going to be best 22. Hawks hunted him from Essendon during the off-season, and I expect him to play the full 23 games this year, so no worries there. Just, probably not enough value for us, in my opinion. Last one I wanted to touch on was Huswaite. Obviously, like I said, he had a huge amount of CBAs, quite a few CBAs, sorry, but really doesn't have the scoring potential to really push and really validate this midfield-only pick at 430k. If he was a bit cheaper, maybe it would be nice, but I really want him to push closer to 70 as a midfield-only pick, and I just don't think he has that pedigree at this point in time with a few other guys around him. Alright, that's enough about Hawthorn. Let's go to Western Bulldogs. Now, the one that really stood out for me was obviously Bontempelli. He really didn't even look like he got out of first gear, honestly. He was sort of just trotting around, doing his thing, just accumulating the ball, getting quite a few tackles, and still managed to score 127. There's no real concern for him going forward, I don't think. I think he had the second most CBAs of the Western Bulldogs behind Liberatore, so definitely no concern there. And if you're confident on starting him, I definitely think it's a good pick. Like I've said previously, he has an awesome run, so I would not hesitate in picking him if that's your fancy. Next one was Sanders. Absolute lock. Don't really need to say too much more. He was just elite, and I think he scored like a 95. Didn't have as many CBAs as what I probably expected, but he's still playing off the half forward and got around the ball plenty of times, so that's good. Next one was Harms. Was solid off half forward. Where is he? If I can find him now. People have dropped off him a little bit just with that price range. It's really that's the only thing that's really throwing me off at this point in time with his game. He would be a good forward pick, but just that price of 71, I think he pushed closer to 80 in that role, but it's probably definitely not enough value in that forward line when considering the other cheaper options. That's why I'm not picking him. And last one was just Caulfield. He was solid without starring. I think he scored a 59, so that's sort of what I expected. I said he'd probably score around closer to 60s rather than 70s. So, I still think that's enough to warrant his pick, especially with considering the depth of our backline. There's not a huge amount of picks back there. So just lock him in, put him in as D6, and don't worry about it for now. But that's all I really had for Western Bulldogs. Let's move on to the final game of the pre-season, which was North Melbourne v St Kilda. We'll go with North Melbourne, obviously being quite a fantasy relevant team. Where are they? Why can't I see them? North Melbourne. Alright, firstly I want to touch on North Melbourne's rotations. It was quite messy. Obviously we had Sinclair that went down in that early KO. We saw the repercussions of that being 7 weeks, so which doesn't have any fantasy implications, but what we saw was LDU and Wardler were clear number 1 and 2 in there, then with Phillips coming in at number 3, but that was only sort of after Simkin went out. Lazaro was also in there, Power filled in, and there was a few others that were on the bench, so it's sort of hard to read, but I definitely sort of expect it to be LDU, Wardlaw, and Simkin when he's fit, with, you know, Lazaro and Phillips and Powell sort of filling in, rotating through there that time. So probably not as hot on Phillips and Powell. I like Lazaro at his price range, so he's probably a lock on my forward line bench for sure, and someone we probably need to consider fielding, because I think he can score well. I think he scored closer to 70 on the weekend, if not even 80s. I can't remember now, but yeah, it could definitely slot into that F6 spots if you're interested. The thing I want to touch on about both of them, obviously, both were playing a very high and fast footy style, so they're really moving the footy real quick, being very handball happy, and which caused multiple mistakes, and there's probably minimal tackles in this game, and probably slightly more marks than there would usually be. Like I said off the top, more marks, less tackles in preseason games. So that's just what I saw in my own eyes, and it was also a very windy game, which helped the mistakes happen. So that wasn't as fantasy friendly game in my eyes. So something to consider when you're watching these games is obviously weather. How does that affect the players? We saw one thing I didn't touch on in the Gold Coast. No, not Gold Coast. Sydney. Who was Sydney versing? Sydney and Brisbane game. It was up in the sticks. It was, I think it was 33 degrees or something like that, and it was just a sweat fest, and the ball was very slippery, and there was just a lot of tackles on offer. So that's why we saw the likes of Errol Goulden get, I think, 9 tackles, and just because he works so hard, he gets to the ball. I think I think it was the first quarter. I remember I think he got 3 tackles in like less than 20 seconds because he's just jumping on people so quickly, moving from one guy to the other real quick, and then he spreads for the ball and gets a quick chip and mark. It's just like instantly had probably 20 points within the span of a minute, which is just elite. So, but it's enough. I don't know why I'm going backwards. Let's move forward. So let's touch on best players. So Fisher, I want to start with, absolute lock. At that price range of 70, he should push that closer to probably timid your expectations. It won't be 117 or whatever he scored. He'll probably 90 to 100, I think. So, which is locks him in and probably pushes him pretty close, if not top. It should be top 6 forward for me. So, yeah, lock him in, 2 sides. Next one was Sheasel, his partner in crime. Did what he had to. Probably didn't star as much as he did in the match sim where he had 42 disposals, but definitely did enough and scored like a 107. So, definitely will improve, and I think he is a great starting pick. McKercher, at that price range, he did quite well. Probably isn't doing as much as what we all expected with the role of the Harry Sheasel. You know, it probably isn't the same structure and same stature as Sheasel, not being a bit shorter, so isn't getting as many free marks as what others have. And there's definitely that third third halfback behind Fisher and Cheezel. So I still expect him to probably get closer to 70s or 60 to 70. Sorry, then probably won't be the best rookie out of that forward line. I think Sanders has him beat at this point in time, but he's still a solid enough pick that you have to start him, in my opinion. His job security is undeniable. Lazzaro, already touched on Lazzaro. I think he's just a lock. He scored quite well, and like I said, consider fielding him if you are confident. Now, the next one was LDU, and it's obviously a huge flag when you only score 37 AFL Fantasy points in a full game of footy. He did have 6 free kicks against, which would have pushed him well over 50, but still, if I'm paying, nearly 900k for a player, even if you're not trying in a preseason game, I want to see something. Don't put up a 38. It's just a huge flag and shows a bit of laziness, in my opinion, and just gives me no confidence in picking him. So, for that reason, like a lot of others, I've jumped off, and it's just a bit of to back up the reason for not selecting him. Has the game gone past him as in terms of their game style? Are they going too quick for him? Whereas he's that inside ball where he wants high contested balls and he wants to tackle and have multiple ruck ups where he can just get the ball in and out constantly. Whereas Ruble, as people are calling it, is going around the outside and really having that run and carry. So he's not really getting in the chain links and getting those marks as much as I would have loved to see. So for that reason, I just can't pick him. I do expect him to be better, don't get me wrong. But, when you're picking for your initial squad, you want to have confidence. And I just don't have any confidence with LDU at this point in time. The other next one was Wardlaw. Scored quite well, but the flag here was that he had no marks and had 12 tackles. Now, 12 tackles is impressive, but it's definitely not sustainable. So, it's something that I wouldn't be relying on, and I would like him to see get definitely a few more disposals, because I think he only had maybe 10 or 12 disposals along with those 12 tackles. So, I definitely want to see him get more disposals and hopefully get some more outside game. So, starting to look more like a impact player rather than an accumulator, like his his junior numbers would have shown. But we'll wait and see. I haven't included him in this side for that reason. A couple more here now. Xeri, I think he did quite well in the ruck against Royal Marshall. He absolutely dominated in terms of hitouts. So he had the 31 hitouts and beat Royal Marshall. I think he only had 12. So that was quite good, and I think it proves for a good floor. So I don't think he'll have too many floor games like the 26 you see here. He's probably pushed his floor up to closer to 50 now, if he can get majority of the hitouts. They're playing that 80% role. One thing that surprised me was that he only had 1 tackle. Like I said, preseason games, they don't want to tackle much, but he definitely has a tackling prowess about him, and he would expect probably 4 to 5 tackles per game and really bump up those numbers. And the only other thing, like I said, it was a very windy game, which does not help for his marking, so it's something to consider. But for that, I think he's absolutely locked in the side for now. Last one I wanted to talk about was just saying Dersma. This is the first time we sort of saw him play. Obviously, he didn't play in the match sim. I don't remember what the cause was, but he absolutely looked great in this game. He was obviously playing a lot forward, being a leading target, because he is a bit taller than what I thought he was. So, but he just racked it up. I think he scored like a 64 and had two goals. So my question really is he worth paying for? And I actually quite like his job security over a few others. So for that reason, I've actually dropped Simpson for him at this stage and just slotted him into my bench line. And I do think he's worth paying up for. Even at his far forward role, he seems to just find the footy and should improve on that 32. So, something to consider. Now, let's just quickly jump over to St Kilda. That's all I wanted to touch on about North Melbourne. Just double checking there. Last team, St Kilda. Why can't I find you? There you are. Okay. Alright, there's not too many to touch on here. Dusty Wilson, absolutely lock. He looked great. He really showed that he's an accumulator and can spread and get multiple marks. I think he had 10 marks, so definitely lock him on your bench and even consider fielding him if you prefer. Could definitely probably replace a Sharp if you have more confidence in him. Definitely look at looping if that's an option for you. Probably can't in the first couple of weeks just because you're meant to have 30 green dots, but definitely something to consider down the line. Next one was Steele. Steele looks solid without being super great in my opinion. Obviously there was a lot of marks going around and he didn't really get amongst it. So that's the big worry. He's very similar to LDU in my opinion, where this game style probably doesn't suit him as much as their old game style is, where they have lots of stoppages. So something to flag and maybe limits his ceiling a little bit, but yeah, something to consider. But I'll keep him in the side, I think. Did I have him in? Yes, I did. Next one was Wanganeen Malira. He was great again off half black. Main general back there with no Sinclair. Absolutely looked great. I can't remember exactly what he scored. I think it was a high 90. So, yeah, definitely has some points to prove on his average. So, if you're confident on him, I think he's a good pick. And I think he's got a good run. So, definitely someone to consider. And I think he's locked into the side now. And not really one we're considering as such for starting selection. But I just really wanted to say that Royal Marshall is such a well-rounded ruckman. He scored 100 on the weekend, even though he had only 10 or 12 hit-outs. He still just managed to get around the ground, get plenty of marks, get plenty of tackles, and get plenty of disposals to really show that he's got that fantasy pedigree to be that number one ruck in the competition, even if he doesn't get the hit-outs. So just something to consider, and we could definitely need to consider getting him into our sides at some stage, I would say. Alright, now let's just fill in a couple of these spots that we have left over. Probably one I didn't mention here in the Essendon game, go back to this one, was Zach Reid. He looked quite good off that backline. I think he scored like 77 or something like that. And I think his job security has only improved now that Ridley has been injured, and I think he'll be out for 4 weeks. Don't quote me on that one. I didn't look into it too much, but yeah, I think he's definitely got some job security there and does have some scoring potential. So for that reason, I've locked him in the defense rookie line. And the last pick that I think I had, no, I had a few different changes. Sorry. For here was, I really liked the look of Jai Newcombe. I think he was great. I think he definitely breaks out this season, and he's been on my watch list. It's not just this guy's gone well in the preseason, get him in. It's one that's been on my preseason quite a long time. On my watch list, and with Day, I think he definitely has that pedigree to jump up a little bit more. And the thing that I did with this team a little bit as well, it was a little bit of a restructure as such, that because it wasn't great that Jeremy Shark scored, what did I do actually? I wasn't comfortable fielding him, so I took him off, moved everyone down, and I put another mid-pricer in there. Where is he? Matt Crouch. So it is very midfield heavy. I do agree with the lines of Matt Crouch, Nick Martin, but I all think they have upside to their scoring capacity. So something definitely to consider. And I do quite like the structure of this team with only having three rookies on the field. The bench looks solid. I don't think we're missing too many of the major rookies. Obviously, Sharp's probably the only one. You could probably justify. You could go Sharp over Dersma if you prefer the job security as such, or the role. But that's all I really want to have to say about that. Alright, so let's just summarise where we're at with the team. So Sheasel, Wanganui Malura, Young, Yo, Cadman, and Caulfield. Then we got Zachary and Pink on the bench. We've got Errol Gordon as our premium captain option. We've got Jack Steele as our underpriced premium. We've got John Newcomb as a breakout candidate. Nick Martin, Crouch, and Wines as our mid prices. Then you've got the two rookies in Kircher and Sanders, with Darcy Wilson and Clark on the bench. As our rucks, we've got Gawn and Exeri. Big watch on... Sorry, we'll get to that after. Cutting myself into Bennett as an R3. Fisher, Nat Fife, Jordan, Cam McKenzie, Sexton, and Reid in the forward line, with Lazaro, Windsor, and Dersma on the bench. I really quite like this team. I won't say it's probably the best team I've made, but I still think it's quite a strong, solid team and can get anyone off to a flying start. You've got a good couple captain options in Errol Gordon and Max Gawn, Jack Steele and Sheasel. They could all have high ceiling scores in the right conditions. Same with John Newcomb. He's shown a high ceiling. Sorry. The other thing I wanted to touch on as well was the early buys. Sorry, that glitched. To show that there's not too many early buy players, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. So that's another strong case to show that it's nothing that's going to hurt you too much. Obviously, round 5 is probably the one that's going to hurt the most, but hopefully by round 5 we've probably had at least one upgrade and we can sort of fill one of those spots. And it's not like we don't have plenty of rookie power that can fill those spots during those best 18 weeks anyway. So definitely something to consider, and the reason why I'm a little bit more lenient to having Errol Gordon as our main premium. Alrighty, so that's really all I had in terms of building this squad in terms of the community games. I really just wanted to quickly touch on round 0 that is approaching quite quickly. It is Wednesday night at the moment, and Thursday's just around the corner when we start to see the first game. Let me just quickly get this up. Oops. I just really want to quickly touch on the team's announcement if it wants to show me. Come on. Sorry, this is not great by me. I should have had it up already, but this is the teams for Thursday night games with Sydney and Melbourne. The thing that I found interesting that Sheldrick is not on the team and Laddams is on the bench, so in the emergency list as well. So definitely Gawn is going to have that number 1 rock role, so we'll definitely get a good look at that. Weirdly, Jordan is named as a follower, but I don't expect that to happen. I expect him to be on the wing. They've just thrown Gordon and McInerney on the wing, so don't read too much into them what the lineup is. Just the weird thing we have to look at for this year is obviously the bench. Now there's 5 players named on the bench, and one of them is gonna be the sub. But it doesn't have to be one of them, sorry. It can be anyone from this team. So we need to really try and make our best guess of who's going to be in here that is going to be the sub. So it's something to keep an eye on. I think we find out an hour before the game. So just keep your ear to the ground and have a look. Quickly touch on Melbourne. So we had 2 debutants in Caleb Windsor and Blake Howes. From what I saw, Blake Howes didn't score too well in the match, the community games. I think it was like 28 or something like that. So, I don't know, someone you can consider if you wanted to. I think he's a forward from memory. Something I'm not considering with a few other major rookies in there. So, but I really just wanted to touch on what to look for in these round 0 games. Obviously, there's only 4 games. There's 8 teams watching, and there's not a whole lot that we're really looking for, just because of those early buys really knock out a lot of those players that we would normally be keen on. So, but in summary, round 0 games. These are the real games. These are premiership points on the line. So this is the teams that are lining up in these games are going to be what we should expect going forward. So the role that they're playing is exactly what we should see week in, week out for the remainder of the season. So obviously a few to watch, keep an eye on for these games is round 1, Sydney versus Melbourne. Obviously Grundy's going to be the major one, him being solo. We've only had maybe half a match sim where I've seen that, so something definitely to consider, and keep an eye on what he scores. Could definitely put his hand up, and I'd sort of expect him to score quite well. Even though it is against Maxi Gawn, I think he can score quite well in that game and really jump back on people's good books and jumping back into some teams. Probably one you don't need to watch too much is Errol Gordon, but really if he somehow magically has a stinker, then it definitely could put it into your considerations to if you want to start him, because he could drop in price quite quickly because he is priced quite high. But I'd be quite surprised if he doesn't have a good game and at least match his break even. So something to consider there. James Jordan, probably another one we don't really watch too much. His role is pretty secure. Just you get another free look at it, you might as well look at it, and you can pretty much draw a line if he scores a certain amount. Lock him into your team. If he doesn't, then maybe you can look elsewhere and look at, a few of the other options that we've discussed today that don't have the bye. And last one for that game was just Matt Roberts from Sydney. He is named on the bench at this point in time, so he could be playing, but he could also be a sub, so just keep an eye on that one. He's meant to be playing off the halfback, and he has shown some scoring potential there. Mid only, so could be one that you could look at putting on your bench. So if he does quite well, lock him into your side and get that early cash generation, even with the early buy. Just something to consider. Right, game 2 was... Let me just quickly get it up as well so I can show you guys something. Brisbane Lions versus Carlton. So don't have the teams yet for those ones, but we'll get those tomorrow night, hopefully. Really only 2 people that I'm really looking at in these games is going to be Coleman and Williams. So really just confirming that Coleman, again, has that role. We don't expect McKenna to be back. I think he's still got an injury. So we're probably going to see Coleman rack it up again. And again, you can draw that line of what do you expect him to score. He's priced at, I think it was 60, 70. So what do you expect him to score? What does he need to score to cement his side? It's meant his selection in your side with that round 2 bye. So I'd probably say needs to go 85 plus, if not 90. So something to consider. I've got to stop saying that. And the only other one was Williams. He has been confirmed to be back for round 0. I expect it's going to be minimal time on ground. So say he comes out in the first half, he's probably going to score maybe 50 to 60 in 50% or 60% game time, and then he's going to get subbed off. And that's going to make it real difficult for us as fantasy coaches to be like, well, 60, yes, it's 20 points above his price stat, but can we trust that the following week he's going to be back to full fitness and playing a full game? Because that's ideally what we want to pick him for, and we don't want to run the risk of him being injured or having minimal time on ground. So just something to consider. Put a line on him. If he scores, say, 70 or above, pick him in your side. If he doesn't hit your line, then look at maybe picking him up at a later stage after the round 2 bye. Next game was the Suns versus Richmond. Not too many to look through here. Maybe just a few confirms with Sexton. We obviously know he's going to play off the halfback. Just confirm that he is the main guy and Powell isn't going to be taking too much off of him. we'll probably get to see a bit more of a realistic scoreline for him as such. So keep an eye out for him. Flanders, a lot of us have turned off Flanders based on his preseason games. So really, let's see what it's going to be like in a premiership game. He could sneak back in a few teams, so something to consider. And Took Miller for me, he looked really, really good in the match sim. And like I said, could be a top 8 midfielder coming into the year. So just keep an eye on him, and if he looks good, then start making your plans to get him into your team. Maybe not as a starter pick, but yeah, make some plans. And the only one that really for Richmond was that Gibkiss. Just seeing if he can improve his scoring output in some way, shape or form. I don't think it's going to be possible, but we'll wait and see. The only other one is probably Short, maybe. He did quite well in the match sim, but I do expect Vlostone to be back for this game and start taking some of those points again. So something to consider. Final game for the round is going to be GWS versus Collingwood. Not a huge amount of fantasy-friendly people here. Obviously, Tom Green, he's going to do Tom Green things. If you're hot on him, then I can't tell you not to pick him. I'm not keen with that early buy. I expect him to be good again. Toby Green, I can see the justification for picking him as a starting pick, like I said. Obviously, with the 2 early games where they play Eagles and North, just make sure he's fit and healthy and doesn't hurt himself or doesn't get suspended. So, just something to keep an eye on. Cadman, hopefully he continues that role as getting up the ground with the likes of Jesse Hogan and their other forward. I can't remember his name now. Yeah, just make sure that he's still getting up the ground and does still have the potential to score a bit more. And finally, we'll just Collingwood, Dacos, just watch Dacos. We'll do Dacos things, and just we'd must to see what that split's going to be like in a proper game. So whether he still comes off that halfback a little bit, or he's just going to be purely 80% sort of midfield time. We'll wait and see. And the last one was just Finn McRae, if he gets named, or if he's a sub, just something to put in the notebook and keep an eye on, really. But yeah, that's really all I had for today's video. Tell me what you think. I'm quite happy with this team. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have I gone too deep in one area? Have I gone too many mid prices? Who would you change out and who would you put in instead? Let me know. At the end of the day, we can all pick this team at the start of the season, and I think we could all do quite well. So let me know your thoughts. I hope you like this video. Leave a like and subscribe. I'm terrible with these outros. I'm never going to get any better with them. But, yep, hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.